Hi boys and girls, we're going to read our next story, which is called The Relatives Came. And this story is written by Cynthia Rylant and illustrated by Stephen Gammell. And I want to review before we start the parts of a book. Remember, this is the front cover and this is the back cover. Do you remember what this is called on the edge here? A spine, right? Just like we have down the middle of our back. And if I were to ask you, can you point on your screen where the title of this story is? If you pointed to these red letters, the bright red letters, you're correct. And then our author is over here and our illustrator is over here. All right, let's listen to this story. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop, and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging! Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Okay. What I'd like you to do right now before I finish the story is find this page in your packet that says The Relatives Came. And we are going to use this picture to work on a skill called visualization. Visualization is when you use the information that you've just read about to come up with a picture in your brain, kind of like a movie reel. And so in this story we just read, the author wrote, then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Are you getting a picture in your head of what it would look like with all of these relatives hugging? Maybe you can even make a connection here to a time when you arrived somewhere near relatives and you were hugging. I would like for you to please draw a picture of what you are visualizing in your head. Draw a picture of all of the relatives hugging. You're going to go ahead and pause the video here, draw your picture, and then you can press play to hear the rest of the story when you're ready. So the illustrator, Stephen Gammell, drew this as his picture. This is what he was visualizing when the author said that all of the characters in the story were hugging. All right, let's see what happened next. Then it was into the house and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s throughout the house. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras, so a few squeezed in with us and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. Could you imagine sleeping with all these people in your house? The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden and they fixed any broken things they could find. They ate up all our strawberries and melons. They promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chests and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. There they go. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses in different mountains, and they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. The end. I hope you enjoyed our story today, and I can't wait to see the picture of what you visualized of all the relatives hugging. I'll see you guys soon.